Hey guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we are going to see how we can create this project card. So this is like a project. The project name is subscribe to Tech with Twin. When was it created? And also we have some description. And then we have the project tasks and the completion. So some of these tasks would be subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow on TikTok, follow on Facebook, follow on X. Then we get the percentage completion, and also we get the users assigned some of these tasks, or the users who are able to view this project. So we're going to use HTML and CSS. And the very first thing, as you can notice, we have an empty or a blank HTML template, as well as an empty style.css file. So we are linking our CSS with this tag. Make sure the file name corresponds to the file name, and make sure they're in the same directory. So we are going to start by adding the Font Awesome CDN link. As I explained later some times ago, a CDN is normally known as a content delivery network, which essentially is used to serve some of these packages. Like for instance, for us to use this icon, so I'm in Font Awesome. For me to use the Font Awesome icons, I need the Font Awesome CSS. So where do I get this CSS? So one of it is to get it through Font Awesome. Another way is to use a CDN, where a CDN is essentially serving these libraries globally and very fast, and these are cached. So whenever maybe I'm building a website from country A and we have another country that is far away, country B, CDN will cache these packages nearer to the users instead of us having to load these ourselves. So let me copy this URL and show you essentially that this is still a CSS file that we are linking. Nothing new here. It's still the same CSS like we have here. But this one, essentially, we are just using it via a CDN. So we could also create our own CSS and we can serve it through the CDN. That's very cool. So there's nothing new here. So what we are going to do, we are going to use this copy link tag, then so that we can just add this link tag to our HTML, and that will be done. So I'm going to add it after our styles. Yes. Okay, I think before. I think we can add it before. So we can move this at the end. So the reason for that is that if we have some styles here on this, if we have some styles here, then we can override them in our style.css file. And that's all we need to do. So then the next thing is to go to Font Awesome website and look for some fonts. The only font we need is the ellipse. We are going to use it here. So without wasting time, let's get started. So I'm just going to add a div with a class of card as always, because this is like a card. And then in that card, we are going to divide these sections. The first way I can divide this is that I can see there is a header section. So the header section has a left hand side and the right hand side. The left hand side has a heading and also some paragraphs. The right hand side has just the ellipse. So that's what we are just going to do. So we create a div with a class of header, and then we create another div because we need to group these two together, but this one is alone. So in this one, we are going to create a heading level 3 that says subscribe to Tech with Twin, and then the paragraph. So we just copy this paragraph and we say P and then created on. So, and then we go to the next, which is the ellipse. We go back to Font Awesome, look for the ellipse. You just search ellipse and then you can copy the ellipse. You just click on the tag itself to get it copied, and we are done with Font Awesome. Paste that in, and that's all for the header section. Let's move to the next section, which is like the description section, but still in the card. So you can say description. So I'm just going to copy the description and paste it there. Done. We're done with that. The next section is the task section. This one with the slider. So we just create another div and say tasks. And then from here, what we can realize is that the tasks has two elements. It has the left hand side, which is the tasks, and the right hand side, which is this slider and a paragraph. So we can create two elements inside here. So we can say, let me make this a bit big. So we can say, we can create a paragraph and say tasks, and then we can create a div with a class of progress, because this one like shows the progress. And then in the progress we have this div which has the sliding functionality, so we just create an empty div. After that, then so we have two elements in the task section. So we have the left hand and the progress section. The progress section has two elements. It has the slider and also it has the percentage. So then the next item we create here is a percentage. Finally, the final section, which is the avatars. So I'm going to create a new div. So you can collapse the tasks and then create a new div here and call it avatar group, because this is like an avatar group. And then inside the avatar group, I have two options. One of the options is to add the images directly, or I could wrap these images in a div so that I can be able to style this outside layout and also to resize this image perfectly. So I'm going to create a div, and then I'm going to use a placeholder library for avatars, which is called pravatar.cc. So if you change the number here on top, you get a new avatar. So this is what I'm going to use, and I'm going to create an image, and then I can paste these icons. I'm going to start at 1, and then you can copy these down maybe 4 times. 1, 2, 3. I think 4 is okay. Yeah, 4 is okay. And then we are done. So let's go live and see what we have right now. So first of all, what I can realize is that these avatars, let me just change the numbers. So this one should be 2, 3, 4. Okay, now, but they are too large. So I'm just going to resize their widths from the HTML. So I'm just going to select all these and add a width of 40. Done. So we are done with that. And then this is what we have. So let's go to the CSS. And the first thing we do in the CSS, we add the default CSS styles. So the first one is that we select every element and change the margin to 0, padding to 0, and a box sizing of border box, just like that. These are the default styles. The margin is to remove margins on all elements, paddings on all elements. Specifying the box sizing makes sure that whenever you give a width or a height to an element, this one is inclusive of its paddings and its margins. So yeah, so the next thing is that I need to use a font. So we can go to fonts.google.com and look for a font that I normally like, which is called Roboto font. So come here on top and search for Roboto, and then on the bottom you can see something that says get font. So you can click the get font and then click get embed code, go to the import and copy the import. Don't copy the tags, just copy the import, and then make sure you copy the font family here. We are going to use it. And then if you come back to our document, we can grab the body and then specify the font family as Roboto. And then as a fallback, we use sans serif. All right, so fantastic. The font has changed. So the next thing we need to tackle now is now the body. On the body, let's place this card to the center. Before then, let's resize the card and give it a fixed width. So we can say a width of 450 pixels. And then now in the body, we can place this to the center by using flexbox. So then we can say justify content to the center. Just like that. And then you can see the content is too close to the edges. So we can add some paddings here. The padding to them. That's fantastic. So the next thing is now let's add a background color to the body. You can see it's white. So we can just do background color and then hash D2, D2, DE. Okay. You can see we added the background color. Let's go now to the card. On the card, let's add a background color of hash 43, 46, 82. All right. And then we can also add a color of, we're not going to use a real white, so we can use hash E for EAFF. Fantastic. The next thing you can realize on the card is that the content is too close to the card edges, so we can add some paddings to the card. The padding I chose is 1.5 rem. Fantastic. The next thing you might realize is that the card edges are too sharp, so we can go ahead and add a border radius of maybe 20 pixels. So you can play around with the border radius so that you can come up with the one that fits you specifically. All right. So the next thing is that in the card, we have different sections. We have the header, the description, the tasks, and the avatar group. We need to give some gaps between these elements. The best way I found to do it is by using flexbox, say flex direction of column. Then we can add a gap of maybe 1 rem. You can see that some spaces were created there. Okay, so the next thing we need to do now is to, I think the next thing we can do now is to, I think we can add some box shadow. So as I showed you, the box shadow, we can generate a box shadow by going to get CSS scan and looking for the best box shadow. So let me look around. I think this one is okay. So we can just copy this, paste it here for the box shadow. You can see it's a bit raised. We can change the color, but I think that's okay. So we are done with that section. Let's now move. We are done with the card itself. Let's go to the first section, which is the header section. And as we said, the header section has two elements, the left hand section and the right hand section. So we can do dot header, and then we can just display them flex. And then you can see now this one has been placed side by side, and then justify content space between. You can see it like that. That's fantastic. And then the next thing is to grab these individual elements. First of all, is to make sure that the subscribe text is whitish. So we can just do dot header. So let's see where the heading level 3 lies. So we have the header, and then inside the header we have a div, but we only have one div. That means we can grab it by the direct children selector, and then we can go to the heading. So what we can do here is header, direct child div, and then heading level 3. We can now say color of white. Fantastic. You can see the color has changed. All right. The next thing we need to grab is this section. This one is too large. We need to resize it. So we can do the same. So header, direct child div paragraph, and then you can say the font size is 0.8 rem. So you can see the size has reduced. The next thing now, let's move on to, I think we can make this icon whitish. So we can just do the same. So this one lies at header, then icon, and then we can say color white. Not too much visible, but I think that's okay. The next thing, let's focus on the description. Here, what I just want to do is to resize it. So we give it a class of description. This description, so we can go ahead and do dot description and then font size of 0.85 rem. You can see it. So the next thing, let's move on to the tasks. Or first of all, let's move on to the avatar group. So we can go to the avatar. So what do you think we should do to the avatar group? So the avatar group is what is holding some of these divs with their images. So we can just display them flex. So you can say display flex. And then you can see they are too close. So we can go ahead and add a gap of 0.4 rem. That's fantastic. And then now before we go to the tasks, let's first fix this one. The first thing we need to do is that, remember, the image lies inside a div. So we can first style the div and then we can style the image. So we can do dot avatar group and then direct child div. So the direct child div selects these children, has to be a child. So this is like a parent mother situation whereby we have a mother has direct siblings or children. not siblings, children. But those children's children are not children of the mother. So this is the same concept. So whenever I say avatar group, direct child div, this means in the avatar group, think of this like a parent, and then these are the children. The image is not a child of the avatar group. And I saw a comment, someone asking why we need to use the direct child. The reason for this is to prevent unnecessary CSS classes, because we could have now started adding unnecessary CSS classes. So what we can do is that we can grab the direct children div, and then the direct children div, we can give it a border radius of 50%. So remember, we are trying to get this layout. So the border radius has to be 50%. But now something you might realize is that we added 50%, but nothing changed. Why? Because the image is overflowing this container. So what we can do on the container, we can do overflow, overflow, hidden. You can see the overflow now. When you say overflow hidden, this one prevents it. It's like masking out all the other parts that are away, they are gone. So overflow of hidden prevents item overflow. And then now we can add a border, say something like 3 pixels solid white. I think 3 pixels is too big, but that's not the issue. The next thing is that let's limit the height of the div. So we can say height, maybe 3 rem. There's something we can add, it's called aspect ratio. We can add an aspect ratio of 1 by 1. So this one makes sure the height and the width are equal. That's a very nice, cool trick we can use there. So we are done with the avatar group, but now the image, I think the image looks nice. We don't need to tackle anything on the image. So the next thing is now the task section. Remember the task section, as I said, it has two elements. This one, left-hand section, the right-hand section with the text and the slider. So we can go ahead and say tasks, display flex. Now you can see that displayed. The reason we are not seeing the slider is because the slider is not yet styled. So we can also add some gap of maybe 0.5 rem. And then we can align items to the center. So align items to the center, make sure that the elements are aligned. Like for instance, if you look at this section, we did not align item to the center. So you can see this one is on top level. But if you said align item center here, this one should go in the middle. Right, so we are done with the tasks. Now let's grab the div that should have something that looks like a slider. So the div lies inside the progress and then the div. So we can just do dot progress. We can first display flex these two elements and then align items to the center and a gap of maybe 0.5 rem. Before I add something new, I'm going to work on the progress and then direct child div. So I talked about the direct child derivative. So the progress direct child div is only this div. So then we can now do a height of 0.3 rem. And also we can do a width of 100%. And finally, we can do a background color of hash 12.14.4b. So this one is still not visible, but now, okay, so do we need an overflow? No. The next thing is that in the progress, we want the progress to take up the whole width. So we can do something cool in Flexbox says, no, we need to capture the progress. The progress is from this section. Let me show you in the finished version. This is the progress. So from here all the way. So we need to give it a flex one property. So flex one makes sure that the item takes up any available space. And in that, you can see our slider, which is this div. Okay, so next up is now on the div. we want to add something that looks like it is sliding, we are going to use pseudo selectors. So that means on the parent, we can do position relative. Okay. And also after doing position relative, so let's now grab the pseudo element of that item. So we can do dot progress, direct child div, and then before. So we said the before came, the pseudo selectors came because if we didn't have the pseudo selector, this would mean we would have to add a new element and say positioned it absolute to the parent. But now with the pseudo elements, you don't have to do that. So you can say position absolute, a content empty, and then we can say a width of 100% and a height of 100%. But now let's give it a background color. So we can say a background. I'm going to use a background linear gradient. So you can say linear gradient. So the direction is 90 degrees. So 90 degrees is this direction. It will be linear. And then starting color will be hash 03, E3, C6. The ending color will be hash 5, CD, 6E4. You can see it now. So this one is coming on top of the parent, and the parent is this div, and this div happens to be what we styled as just an empty thing, but we gave it some height. And so instead of 100% of the width, we can use something like 43%. Then you can see it goes. So the next thing, if you zoom in, you can see the edges are not rounded. So we can come here and add a border radius of 5 pixels. But now we'll be faced by the same issue. If you look closely, you can see that this one did not respect the border radius. Why? Because the before is overflowing. So we can do overflow hidden. Now you can see this one is smoothened, and then let's increase the font weight on this. So we can do that progress direct child paragraph. You can say font weight of 600. That's fantastic. So if we go back, so let me open it again. So if you go back, I don't know what we might have missed. Okay, we have some new stuff going here on the card itself. So what we are going to do is still the same thing. So we go back to the card, position it relative. Then we can now capture the before of the card. So you can say card before content. We always start with an empty content because here in the content you can add emojis, text like that. Position of absolute. Let's give it a height of maybe 0.3 rem. So let's go to this finished version. Height of 0.3 rem, and then width 100%. Let's do a background color of hash F6 0893. Now you can see where it is. So we just need to position it to be on top. So we can say top 0. You can see where it went, and then we can say a left of 0. Okay, that looks nice, but now it's overflowing. We have the same issue. We go to the card and say overflow hidden. Fantastic. And that's it, guys. That's how we create such a card. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, follow, and comment down below. Thank you.